Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for Local Advocacy Getting Started in Your Community. My name is Julia Thayer. I'm the Associate Director of Advocacy here at the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance. Before we dive in, I just want to start by kind of setting expectations for what this session is and what it's not. This webinar is designed really to be accessible. You don't need prior advocacy experience, you don't need to be a policy expert, and you do not need to leave here today feeling like you should be doing everything. Instead, the goal really is for you to leave with a clear understanding of what advocacy really is, how it already might show up in your life, and where it might fit in for you in ways that feel realistic, meaningful, and empowering. Because this session is pre-recorded, I really encourage you to treat it more like a guided conversation rather than a lecture. You can pause, rewind, come back to sections as needed. And as you listen, you might find yourself thinking, this feels intimidating, or I don't know if I could do that. If that happens, I just encourage you to stick with me because advocacy is often much more accessible than we imagine. So, as far as the agenda, here's a brief overview on what we'll be covering today. We'll start by talking about what advocacy is, and just as importantly, what it's not. Then we'll discuss why local advocacy matters, especially when it comes to health equity and access. We'll walk through a quick overview of how local government works, not a civics lesson, really just enough context to understand where decisions are made. And then we'll spend most of our time on practical, real world ways to get involved locally. Finally, we'll end by discussing a little bit about how OCRA supports advocacy work and how you can take next steps to get involved. As we move forward with the program, I encourage you not to think, which of these should I be doing? And instead think, which of these could I imagine myself doing? So, when we say advocacy, we're talking about influencing decision makers to create change. At its core, advocacy is about speaking up for people, issues, or causes and supporting solutions that really matter to your community. Many people hear the word advocacy and kind of immediately think politics or confrontation. And while advocacy can include policy, it is not about arguing or being loud. Advocacy can look formal, like testimony or meetings with elected officials, but it can also be informal, a conversation, an email, showing up to a meeting, or sharing information. All of these things count. Advocacy is really about being informed, intentional, and persistent. For example, if you've ever emailed a school board, raised a concern with a hospital system, or asked a local official to pay attention to an issue, that's advocacy. So, a little bit more about what advocacy is. I want to emphasize this point a lot. Your voice truly has power. Advocacy helps shape legislation and public policy, but it also shapes awareness, priorities, and how issues are understood. Advocacy can mean speaking up for change and awareness. It can mean sharing lived experiences and highlighting gaps in care or access, and almost always involves building relationships with decision makers. Most change doesn't happen because of one big dramatic moment. It happens because someone keeps showing up and becomes a really trusted voice over time. Formal and informal actions both count. And again, advocacy is not a single moment, it's a process. I want to pause for 1 second here, and I want you to think about a time you've spoken up for yourself, for a loved one, or for your community. At the time, you may not have called it advocacy, but that instinct to speak up is exactly where advocacy begins. So, why focus on local advocacy specifically? Many of the decisions that shape health priorities, funding, and access to care happen close to home, often long before something becomes a state or federal issue. Community and local leaders influence what gets visibility, what gets funded, and which communities are prioritized. Local officials also are often more accessible. They're more likely to respond to emails, attend community events, or meet with constituents. Relationships built locally often last. While administrations change, community relationships carry forward. So, a little overview on what is local government. Now, local government really can look different depending on where exactly you live, but it often includes mayors, city or town councils, county boards or commissions, county administrators, and local health departments. It can also include public health boards, hospital or health system boards, and planning or budget committees. So, why does this matter for ovarian and gynecologic cancer advocacy? Well, health departments influence education campaigns, awareness months, and screenings. City councils and mayors can issue proclamations and really as elevate visibility of an issue. Hospital boards influence outreach and equity initiatives. And budget committees are often where funding decisions actually happen. So, having said all of that, you don't need to engage with all of these. Advocacy does not require mastery, it just requires curiosity. So, take a minute here and think about where a great entry point could be for you. So, a little bit more here on how local advocacy connects to ovarian and gynecologic cancer. Local advocacy is deeply connected to cancer outcomes. So, raising awareness, for example, of symptoms and risk factors expands awareness across diverse and historically underserved communities. Community education improves access to accurate, timely information, especially at the local level. Awareness months and proclamations increase visibility and credibility and signal that this issue matters. All of this builds momentum for policies that then reduce barriers to care and support equity. So at the end of the day, local advocacy turns awareness into action and action into change. So again, a little bit of an overview here on ways to engage locally before we dive into some more detail. There are many ways to engage locally, none of which require doing everything at once. I really want that point to be emphasized. You can attend public meetings, even just to listen. You can contact local officials. You can share your story. You can partner with community organizations. And you can support awareness and fundraising efforts. Advocacy can start with just one action. So, again, as you're listening to this presentation, I want you to really notice which of these feels least intimidating. That's often the best place to start. So this slide here is really just a way to kind of frame advocacy efforts on a scale from low to high lift. One way to think about advocacy is by lift, effort, or commitment. So low lift actions are quick and accessible. Medium lift actions require a bit more preparation. High lift actions involve a little bit of a deeper commitment. All of these levels are valid. Advocacy is not about doing the highest lift action. It's really about choosing what best fits with your life right now. So, some examples of low lift actions could include signing a petition, sharing on social media, sending an email, or even breaking out some teal or purple buttons or pins. Medium lift could include attending a town hall, writing a personal letter or op-ed, and some examples of high lift actions include setting up meetings with legislators, providing testimony at a hearing, or organizing an awareness and fundraising event. Advocacy that fits your life is sustainable advocacy, and that's really what we're going for. So, diving in a little bit more into ways to engage locally, I want to emphasize the importance of building relationships. So, building relationships with legislators is one of the most impactful forms of advocacy. Knowing your lawmakers helps them understand your community. It positions you as a trusted source of information, and it allows you to share stories that they will remember. You can contact legislators by email, phone, social media, or action alerts. You can also meet with staff. Best practices here really are simple. Be clear, be concise, and focus on the community impact. So, a little bit more here on attending local meetings. Local meetings are open to the public and they're really designed for community input. If you're new, start by listening, learn how the agendas work, and engage when you're ready. You don't have to speak on day one to be an advocate. Now, diving a little bit into the importance of your story. Stories humanize issues in ways that data and statistics alone just simply cannot. Patients, survivors, caregivers, and allies all bring different perspectives that are all important. When you tell your story, you put a face to statistics, you connect lawmakers to lived experiences, and you inspire others to speak up. Never underestimate the impact your story can have. Now, since storytelling is such an important aspect of advocacy work, I want to just provide some practical tips and dive into this a little bit more. So, first things first, sharing your story does not mean sharing everything. Start with what matters most to you. Connect your story to the bigger picture. And a very important piece here is to be clear about your takeaway or ask. Keep it concise and authentic and share at your comfort level. Remember that you control your story and remember that your lived experience is expertise. So oftentimes it can feel like the person you're speaking to is an expert in the room when really you're the expert of your own story and your experience is expertise. A little bit on community-based advocacy here. So community-based advocacy just really means connecting with what's already happening in your community. So, whether that's partnering with local organizations, participating in events, building or joining coalitions, amplifying education and resources, at the end of the day, just be a voice for your community wherever you are. And that is one of the simplest ways to get involved with advocacy. Again, I want to emphasize this point. This is a hugely important piece to remember. It can help make advocacy a lot less intimidating. Advocacy can meet you where you are. It can fit into your life. It can be one time or ongoing, public or behind the scenes, big or small. At the end of the day, you decide how and when to engage, and remember that every action counts. So choose what works for you. Here's just kind of a simple overview of how OCRA supports advocacy work before diving into a little bit more detail around what we offer. The message here really is that you don't have to do this alone. OCRA provides education, tools, and advocacy opportunities. We connect a national community of advocates, and at the end of the day, we're here to make advocacy clearer, easier, and less isolating. So, having said all of that, I want to dive into just a little bit more detail on how OCRA supports advocacy and include some important updates and resources from the policy and advocacy team here at OCRA. So, this past fall, OCRA launched its new Center for Public Policy. This serves as our dedicated hub for policy and advocacy work. This was a really intentional step for us. The center brings together our federal and state policy efforts, grassroots engagement, and new advocacy tools all in one place. Instead of advocacy feeling fragmented or kind of hard to follow, the goal here really is to just make it easier for people to see what's going on and where they can plug in. The center focuses on OCRA's core policy priorities, which include research funding, access to quality care, equity in clinical trials, access to drugs and diagnostics, and survivorship support. These are the issues that directly impact people's lives, and they're also areas where advocacy can truly make a difference. So, one feature that I also want to highlight is the interactive policy map. This tool allows advocates to track legislation across states and at the federal level and allows you to see advocacy opportunities in real time. So again, you do not need to be a policy expert by any means. The map really is there to help translate what's happening and where action is needed. So if you're interested in learning more or exploring the center a bit, I encourage you to visit ocrahope.org/advocacy. Even just browsing around a bit can help you better understand how advocacy connects to real policy change. And in addition to the Center for Public Policy, OCRA offers several ways for advocates to stay engaged. Whether you're just getting started, like many of you here today, or looking to deepen your involvement, one of our flagship programs is the Advocate Leaders Program, which provides training, resources, and ongoing support for advocates who want to engage more deeply at the state and federal levels. This is really a great option for folks who want structured learning and community around advocacy. Each year, we also host Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., where advocates come together to meet directly with lawmakers and elevate ovarian cancer priorities. This is a powerful example of how individual voices can really collectively drive impact. On a regular basis, OCRA also shares monthly Advocates Corner updates from our policy team. These updates break down just what's happening in the policy world in a really clear and accessible way, and it also highlights opportunities for folks to engage. Finally, we also send out targeted action alerts to mobilize advocates when it matters most. So, when a call, an email, or a message can truly influence an outcome. So, the key thing I want to emphasize is this: OCRA offers multiple entry points to advocacy work. You can engage in ways that fit your time, comfort levels, and interests, and grow from there if and when you're ready. So, some simple next steps here. I really just want to provide some actionable ways to get started with this advocacy work. The first thing that you can do is learn who your local elected officials are. This is a really great way to just take that first step into advocacy work. You can follow a meeting, whether it's city council, county board, or health department meeting, and choose one local action that really feels doable. Most importantly, stay connected. As I mentioned previously, signing up for OCRA's action alerts is one of the easiest ways to stay informed and engaged. You can do that at this link right here. And then I also mentioned the Advocates Corner blog where we post monthly updates on our work. That is at the link right here as well. And if you want to learn more about OCRA's Advocate Leaders Program, you can visit the link here to learn more about the program and how to apply. Some final thoughts that I want to end on. Advocacy starts locally. Your voice and story matter, and there is no single right way to engage. Every action, big or small, helps move change forward. So I just want to end here by, taking a moment of gratitude for your time, for your interest in OCRA's advocacy work and getting involved yourself. I want to provide my contact information if you have any questions regarding the work that we do here at OCRA, or if you want to get more involved, please feel free to email me. Thank you so much again for your time today, and reach out if you have any questions.